We are still several weeks away from really getting into the 2024 draft, but the G-League Ignite and Perth Wildcats played in a 2-game exhibition they called the Fall Invitational last week, and it not only featured the Ignite's biggest number of young prospects, including guys like Buzelis and Holland battling for that top spot, but also another guy on Perth asserting himself in that conversation, and that is 7'1" French big man Alex Sarr. The team split the series, with Ignite winning the first and Perth winning the second behind big efforts from Jordan Usher and Bryce Cotton. But in this video, we'll focus on some of the bigger takeaways from the most prominent prospects, starting with the guy who increased his stock most in Alex Sarr. Sarr put on a real show in these 2 games, averaging over 21 points and 6 blocks. He had also gotten off to a good start in Perth's first preseason action a few weeks ago, and really carried that over back to the States where he had spent the last couple years with Overtime Elite. But we got to start with what he did on the defensive end, because that was one of the clear standout pieces of what he did and what he brings as a player. He's an excellent athlete with great movement abilities at 7'1" with a 7'5" wingspan, and that allows him to cover ground at a high level and essentially be everywhere on the court. He had a total of 12 blocks in 2 games, coming in a variety of ways, but the help side rim protection was excellent. He routinely read plays and helped from all parts of the floor, from the help side corner to the top of the key. It really didn't matter, and he was liable to send a shot into the 5th row or at least change it at any given moment. He also did his thing out in space, staying in front of or stride for stride with a few perimeter players, including Holland on a few occasions.
Holland, he goes right at Sarr. He's also been more vocal, rolling out, pointing things.
And he was solid in pick and roll as well. Here he's to the level, and even as there's an angle given up with the touch screen from Almansa, Sarr quickly flips his hips and uses his length and athleticism to erase the opportunity that once looked like free money. So when you add it all up, the rim protection, ground coverage, presence on the glass to finish possessions, and then feel from a young big, it's hard not to get really excited for what he can be on this end, and it's a big part of his appeal as a prospect.
Kick out Sane. He has to pick up his dribble. Now it's Sane working one-on-one against Henschel. Discards the defender.
Now offensively, he made a significant impact as a play finisher and lob threat around the rim. He also came up with some big time putbacks in both games and really made his presence felt there. And I was pretty impressed by his motor and activity, and he's taken advantage of the increase in involvement offensively. He got out and ran in transition, and if there was any sort of runway, he was going to take off and reach heights that the Ignite weren't going to try to challenge. And while he's shown it at different times in the past, he also flashed the ability to grab and go or bring the ball at least across the timeline. There are plenty of things that he'll need to work on as a ball handler to do that more consistently, and even in the half court, being able to fully explore more of the upside as a potential closeout attacker or someone who could fake a DHO to the rim. But you like what you see there from him for now. He also didn't shy away from taking the occasional 3-ball, especially as a pick or slip and pop guy. The mechanics are workable, he's taken them in the past, and when you combine that threat with everything else we've talked about, there's a lot to like and a path for him to be a really tough cover in the future. Now in terms of improvement, I think long term getting stronger and being able to handle more physicality is really going to help push his game forward. Now it hasn't been to the level I kind of expected, which is a huge positive, but you can still see moments in these games where that physicality kind of affects him. And then also just his body control and getting more used to handling the ball and improving as a decision maker there at times, and also being a little bit more tight with his footwork and avoiding careless travel turnovers. He had 10 total giveaways in these 2 games, which is obviously not very good, but that's all stuff among a few other things that we'll talk about later on throughout the year I think it's pretty clear he'll need to get better at. But as long as he continues to play to the level of physicality, displays the motor and two-way skill set that he has been, I think it's going to be very difficult to leave him out of top 5 and potentially number 1 overall convos unless some others emerge in a big way. And we've already started to see his stock skyrocket early.
Spinning.
Experience the player can have is playing with other good players and see what they can.
Now another steal. Here comes Perth. They've got a 2-on-1.
Now getting into the Ignite, Holland was the prospect on their team who performed the best in these exhibitions, averaging 28 points on 56% from the field. And for someone who has long had potential number 1 pick expectations, this was a very good start for him. But the thing that impressed me most was his overall progression as a ball handler and self-creator. Now, when I say that, it is important to understand the context of where he's been in the past, because he still has a whole lot of things to work on to get certain responsibilities in the league. But for someone someone who had major questions in what he would bring to the table offensively beyond the motor and athleticism, this was great progress. He was looking to get downhill into the bucket early and often, and with that improved handle and his athletic ability, he had a lot of success there, even getting to the free throw line when he wasn't able to convert. He shot 14 free throws in the second game, and this hezzy right here almost had me out of my chair even on the rewatch. I definitely didn't expect him to be doing things like this immediately on the pro level, but again, this was big time. I also thought Ignite did a good job of simplifying things for him too, whether it was playing off of Mika or out of that horns look or even the little pitch action. That stuff did and will likely open up a lot of easy opportunities. Holland got out in transition too, grabbing and going off the glass, changing ends off a defensive play or just running the lane, and he found quite a few opportunities there. Now he can still be a bit reckless when he's headed downhill, still very much a north-south guy, and the biggest steps for him in the future will be reading the defense and making the proper decisions out of those drives, but overall he showed he can be a real threat here. Now some of the self-creation from 3 and from the mid-range is still very much to be determined in terms of how effective he is at it, but man, it was hard not to be impressed. He had a pullback into a 3, he got to the mid-range a few times, knocked down a few off the catch, and this is some of the stuff that could dramatically change his offensive outlook, and even if it's just flashes, it is good progress to see.
Crosses him over, loses his man, Holland.
Well, John, they can play. I mean, they don't have fear in their game.
Now on the defensive end, I thought he was okay. I kind of expected a little more out of him in terms of containment on the perimeter and finishing possessions on the glass, so we'll see how that looks over the course of the season for someone who has this as a potential calling card. He was still fairly active, made some good rotations and got some deflections, and it led to transition opportunities, but there were also just a few too many lapses to be fully satisfied, particularly because of what he's capable of. But again, we'll see how he settles in over the course of the year. Ultimately, I don't want to etch it in stone right now, but I'm leaning towards him at number 1 coming into the preseason. We'll have plenty of time to come to an actual conclusion at the end of the year, of course, but the offensive growth matched with what he brings with the motor, athleticism, and defensive versatility at NBA wing size, and while being one of the youngest in the class, I think that's enough for heavy consideration at number 1, even being listed now at just 6'6" by the Ignite.
Keeps the possession alive. But Holland, all alone, it's showtime!
My number 1 from the too early big board, Modest Buzelis, didn't quite have as impressive a start to his Ignite career. However, big picture, there were still a lot of good moments and things to be intrigued by, and most of the areas he struggled were far from a surprise. But starting with the good, I was pretty impressed with him defensively. He did a solid job of containing and keeping the ball in front of him. He was active in passing lanes, coming up with several deflections, and most of all, he was pretty aware and engaged in help, which was something I really wanted to see from him, and he matched up with 2 through 4 at different points during these games. Now he did still give up some easy ones in there. He fouled a shooter, there was some miscommunication on a ball screen a time or two, but for the most part, even when he got scored on, he got a pretty good contest in there. And somewhat similarly to Ron Holland's handle and creation, Buzelis' seeming defensive progress is something that stood out to me in these games. And then offensively, we will get into some of the areas he struggled, but it is still hard not to be impressed by his movement abilities and upside as a perimeter guy at what I still believe to be at least about 6'9", 6'10", just off the eye test, though he's now listed at 6'8" by the Ignite. Obviously, they would know better than anyone unless it was a typo or something, but he has some really smooth drives and finishes at the bucket, from attacking the closeout in the corner and finishing with the up and under reverse, to the behind the back into the and one lefty finish at the rim, and also getting out and handling it in transition and getting to the bucket. He had a big posted dunk moving off the ball, and I was a big fan of how he performed there. Even when it didn't result in points for him, he consistently found open spaces and created some opportunities in the process.
Against these guys to get better. Well, Ignite played as a team against some of those NBA teams. As
another thing to be athletic and tall.
John Jenkins, the best shooter in the G-League.
Competed in for the past several years, so we're excited for that for them.
He knocked down a few corner threes and was 3 for 7 during the Invitational, which is a huge key for his success as more of an off-ball guy. So yeah, there were still a lot of positives and reminders of why he can be one of the premier prospects in the class. But he will need to continue growing as a ball handler, playing through physicality and finishing at the bucket. He lost the ball, committed turnovers, and was unable to create an advantage off the bounce a few times in these games, which I'm not super surprised by, but he'll need to learn from it and make an adjustment in the future, and also being a little more assertive is important too, and I'll be interested to see where he ultimately finds his spots in an offense I think will really serve him well as he gets more and more acclimated. I don't really know how others felt about his performance in these games, but I thought he was solid and I'd still have Modest as top 5 worthy. I think the areas we highlighted in the first look video before are very evident and he'll need to keep working at some of that stuff, but when you're putting up 16 and 17 points in the flow of things and making an impact on defense and we still think you can play much better, that's a real positive to me, so he's still definitely in contention at the top. Now, Izan Almansa is a name people probably still aren't as familiar with at this point, but he'll be one of the more prominent prospects in this class, and though some of his impact is a little more subtle than some of his teammates, the value is still very much there. As usual, I was really impressed by his defensive activity and versatility in these games. He was excellent in the pick and roll, executing a few different coverages. He had great positioning and he was on time and covered ground well on rotations. There were very few times that he was out of position, and again, while it doesn't always show up in the box score or directly lead to a turnover or missed shot, it definitely doesn't go unnoticed. But he also came up with a total of 8 stocks in these games too, doing all of this while showing he could still hang with a guy he knows well in Alex Sarr and Perth's other bigs, as he played a lot of center.
He's sneaking free, but a good block there by Tyler Smith. Pinder gets it back. Shot clock. Wildcats are using that pick and roll cross-court passes. Broken up by Almansa. Got the 2-on-1, takes it himself, and blocks the Jordan Usher, also contributing with 12 points. Here's the breakout. Izan Almansa.
On offense, he did a lot of his work, again playing the 5 and operating as a roll man. He showed off his athleticism and quick twitch around the bucket, finishing over the top for dunks. And he's also got great touch and a tremendous floater or push shot game. And he shows some of the attacking from the perimeter we've seen from him in different settings as well.
Ignite. Pargo pick and roll. Almansa can come up with. Under 5 minutes to play in the ballgame. Almansa.
I'm also a big fan of his upside as a playmaker in these situations. He makes quick and accurate decisions, and I think he's someone that's going to be a weapon on short rolls and comfortable going side to side and running dribble handoffs. It has some eventual upside as a guy you run some things through. Now, while liking all of this stuff, I could see there being some difficulty fitting him places offensively if he's not your 5, as long as he continues to be a mostly non-shooter and also not like a creating wing either. And on the other end, if he is your 5, are you comfortable with him anchoring a defense at the NBA level? That'll be a relationship to watch and project long term, but overall I thought he did a lot of great things, showed a lot of his game. I'm a big fan of his at this stage. He just knows how to play and I'm valuing that quite a bit. He already has quite a few fans in the lottery range, but I think that's only going to continue to grow, and I'm excited to see how he improves individually and helps them win games over the course of the season. Now, with these last few guys, we won't get as deep into detail just for the sake of time, but they are still very much in draft consideration, even as high as the first round. Starting with Tyler Smith, he's yet another former member of Overtime Elite, seeing some big time success, and he showed off his skill set as a 6'10 forward who moves really well at that size, loves to shoot the 3-ball, and can face up as well. I honestly wasn't sure how much opportunity he would get with Ignite this year, but it looks like he's pretty firmly going to have a role throughout, given what he can do on the offensive end, his skill set, and he was once one of the most highly regarded prospects in his class years back, and he's emerging once again. Defensively, he held his own, and I think seeing him in this type of structure is going to be really good for him because he has been capable and had some intriguing moments in terms of guarding multiple positions and covering around. He has 7 blocks in 2 games already. He was a plus 25 in his minutes in game 1 and made his presence felt in a real way on both ends. I know some who are as high as the lottery to top 20 on him. I don't have the same level of intrigue quite yet, but I definitely think he could be in that first round mix, and I'm excited to see where he goes from here. Now on to London Johnson. This is his 2nd year with the Ignite, and he'll be someone I'll be watching for to take that jump forward as a player. He was okay in these games to me, nothing too spectacular. I thought some of the decision making was still spotty, especially early in possessions. I'm not 100% sure what his elite skill is as a guard, but there are pieces there to like. I appreciated the aggressiveness even when the results weren't 100% positive. He had some high level flashes as a playmaker as well, and I thought he had some excellent moments defensively in there too. And London kind of holds the keys for this Ignite team having a lot of success in terms of wins and losses this year because of the the importance of his ball handling and creation given the other skill sets that are on the roster. So we'll see what he's able to do as someone who should be in draft conversations, and look forward to following him and his progression throughout the year. And then the Babacar Sane experience is definitely going to be a fun one. Now, it's not going to be without plenty of mistakes, and the contrast between some of his best and worst plays on any given day are kind of funny to watch. But a 6'6", 230-pound forward or wing who moves well, can play some inside and out, and handle the ball a little is always going to be intriguing. He knocked down a few threes, attacked some closeouts, and did a little face up and work in the post, taking a whole lot of shots in this action. He also showed some versatility defensively, sticking on guards and providing some resistance help side. Again, the results aren't always there at this point, but he's an interesting player I think could turn into something substantial. But once Thierry Darlin and Dink Pate return, I am curious to see what his minutes look like.
Sane's going 1-on-2. Sane thought about it, now puts it on the deck.
But that's really everything I wanted to cover in this one. Shout out to John Jenkins and Eric Mika. Their contributions on this level are really huge for the success of this program, and in terms of skill sets, they are absolutely perfect for this squad. But yeah, that's all I've got for this one. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. It really helps out the channel. Subscribe if you are new around here, and let me know some of your biggest takeaways from these exhibitions or any other thoughts that you have. I got some stuff you guys usually enjoy coming very soon, so stay locked to the channel for all that. And now, as always, I'm Keandre, this is HoopIntellect. Until next time, I'm out.